Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today we are thinking about somatics. Yes, that's a thinker. So luckily I brought Heather back onto my show and she chose the lovely topic for today. So I am curious, Heather, what does somatics mean to you?
So, somatics, soma refers to the body. And so, somatics is the practice of using the body. And in our nervous system, there's actually two different types. There's the autonomic nervous system, which is responsible for like blood circulation, breathing, all of that, those processes. And then the somatic nervous system is what we can control. So, like moving our arms, and that sort of thing. So we can use the somatic nervous system to actually control the autonomic nervous system to a certain extent.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That is
And
very interesting.
what this does is so trauma gets stored in the body.
Mhm.
And so when we use the somatic work, we release the trauma that is stored in our body because what happens is during trauma, a lot of the time our response, our protective response will stop the natural process that needs to take place for the event to clear through us,
Hmm.
which is why it gets stuck. And so when
Yeah,
we do certain movements, we can actually clear that energy out of us and regulate our nervous system.
that's really interesting because to be honest, when you brought up somatics, I was like, what is this? So I had to do my own little Google search, and it basically, for me, from my understanding, is kind of like what you said. It's like healing your body and using your body to clear out the old junk, the unnecessariness. But I'm really stuck because what's the real difference between somatic healing and trauma healing then? Or is it just both tied in together?
It's tied in together. So you can use somatics to heal trauma.
Yeah, from what you
Yeah.
said earlier. So that's why I'm just like, it sounds more like they're intertwined versus that than if they were two separate entities. And that's interesting because is it kind of like Naya techniques? Because I heard of a Naya techniques, how it's trauma healing because by moving your body. So is that kind of the same thing or is that different?
I actually haven't heard of Naya techniques before, so I'm
Oh.
familiar with that. Yeah.
Oh, look at me. I'm making you think. That's awesome. See, that's what my show's all about. Yeah. Because I had a guest on my show who talked about Naya techniques, and it's basically like you move your body in a certain way and you focus on the moment. You know what I mean? So if the instructor is telling you to just sway your hips, okay, so you're just supposed to sway your hips, and that's all you're supposed to do. And that's supposed to help with whatever trauma that you have made in your hips. And it's just basically moving your body. So I'm just like, is there a certain way in somatics where you move your body to release that trauma then?
There are certain things that you can do just because like our there are certain symbols that we can do. So for example, one
Hmm.
thing that I do with my clients is if they want to be more like in their authenticity.
Yeah.
And what I do is I say, okay, so take your hands, put them in front of your face, like act like you're grabbing, and
Okay.
then push it out to the side. And what
Oh,
that does is it reveals the mask that you're wearing.
okay. Okay. I see what you're saying. So it's kind of like releasing the energy that may be surrounding you, right? Because that's what
Yeah.
it sounds like. Because it's like you're not really grabbing and gripping your skin.
No.
You're releasing and moving that that blindness that we can't see. You know what I mean? That energy that may be fogging us. So that makes sense. That's
Yeah.
nice. That's
Yeah,
different.
it's the subconscious. A lot of people think of the subconscious as like the mind and thinking, but the subconscious doesn't really think. It's
Just
actually
acts.
our body's wisdom and it works in symbols. So when we move in certain symbolic ways, We are bypassing our conscious mind, our ego, and going straight to the subconscious.
Well, how many symbols are there? Because I know you keep saying symbols, so I'm curious, like, what type of symbols are you referring to? Because this is
It
really interesting to me.
Everybody's body is different. Like what people relate to is different. But so for example, if you want to incorporate more pleasure in your life, you what I
Uh-huh.
have people do is I start from like your fingertips
Okay.
and slowly, like in a pleasurable way, move your hands
Uh-huh.
like over your arms to really feel the sensations of pleasure.
And it's showing you also another form of pleasure that's simple. So
Yeah.
that is interesting. I like that.
Yeah. When people want to feel more worthy, we all want to feel worthy, right?
Yeah.
So, a lot of the time we'll say affirmations like, I am worthy, I am worthy. But what really gets it in is, first of all, you don't need to say I am because you already are. You were born worthy. But what I do is I do what's called worthiness baths. And so literally you spread out your hands as wide as you can and you rub over your entire body just saying worthy, 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 every single inch of your body.
Yes.
And
Okay, I
that
like
tells
it.
your subconscious mind, all of me is worthy. It reminds it, all of me is worthy.
Yeah. And I love that part, just putting your hands on every crevice, every inch, every crease, whatever that it is that's your body, because we like to choose what parts of our bodies worthy of beauty or worthy of acceptance or worthy of anything. And it's sickening because I know that I've even done it growing up, and I used to look at myself in the mirror and be like, if only I was skinnier, or if only this part of me was off. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? And you are basically teaching another way of basically like, no, every part of you is worthy. You are whole. You are great as you are. You don't need nothing chopped off. No botch, no doctors, none of that. You are just have to accept you as you are. And it's hard. It's hard to accept yourself as all that you are. And in your words, I mean, why do you think that is?
We sort of get told from a young age, like, oh, if you do this, then you'll be lovable. And we equate that love with worth.
Yeah.
So we're like, oh, if I do this thing, then I'll be worthy. If I please this person, then I'll be worthy. I'll be lovable.
Yeah.
And, and I mean, I don't want to blame anybody, right? Adults, they do their best. But
Yeah.
they're not thinking like, oh, if I tell them to do this, I'm telling them, oh, you're worthy if you do this.
Yeah.
But we
That's true.
internalize, yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I like that. So I'm curious, what made you get into somatics yourself? Like, what made you realize, like, this is something that can work for me?
I was working with a mentor who, he like I was already working with him. And then all of a sudden he started talking about somatics. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And we did like some work together. I'm like, wow, this is really life changing.
Oh,
Like everything that I had done before, like, like meditations, I had done Reiki, sound healing, like all the thing, therapy, all the things, but nothing did it like somatics. And I said, oh, wow, this is so great. And so I started learning more about it. And I work with a different mentor that just does somatics now, but we can apply it to anything. Like I work with a mentor who applies it to wealth and money.
huh.
I Yeah, like we can heal because there's trauma around different relationships that we have to things. So we can
Yeah,
literally use it for anything we want to heal. And it's so powerful.
it's interesting. So it makes you wonder, like, what part of you that you're trying to heal from. And then once you focus on what you really want to heal, because you kind of have to accept the fact that you're broken, or that you're hurting in some
Mhm.
way or form, to realize like I need to fix this part of myself, and to come to that conclusion of just like this works for me. That's a big step, because not everything works for everybody. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? I've met people who meditation, that's their go-to, because that's what works for them. And some people, they go to Naya technique, or they go to tapping, or you know what I mean? They have all these different avenues to heal. And I think that's the beauty of healing, is that there's really no wrong way to heal, as long as you're trying. Am I right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, somatics, the interest, so breath work is considered somatic work.
Is
EFT
it?
tech is considered somatic work. And what you talked,
Oh,
the Naya technique, I didn't know what it was called, but like that's somatic work.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's
Wow. Wow,
anything
that's
with the
interesting.
body. Yeah, so meditation's with the mind, right? But anything with the body is somatic work.
Well, goodness gracious, way to make me think about it, because I'm like, well, that does make sense, because if it's somatics, and it's basically a big umbrella, and then it
Mhm.
has all these little sections under it, like tapping and breathing and all of that other stuff that we mentioned, and I'm just like, wow, that's a real thinker, because it just shows that you are healing your trauma, you are healing that part of you that truly needs healing. Hmm. Wow, that truly makes me think. But
Yeah.
when I was doing my Google research, I love to look at quotes about, the topic at hand. And I found a few quotes, and I really want to know your thoughts on that, if you don't mind me sharing them. But one of them is, the human body is not an instrument to be used, but a realm of one's being, to be experienced, explored, enriched, and thereby educated. What are your thoughts when you hear that quote?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely true. We objectify ourselves. We treat ourselves like instruments.
Yeah,
And I don't know what the listener's beliefs are, but like even in scripture, for example, it talks about the sanctity of your body
yeah,
and making sure that your body is pure. And yeah, I mean, we kind of just treat our body like it's just, oh, this thing. And then later in life, we're like, oh, why am I so sore? Why am I so miserable? It's because your body is screaming and crying out for help. It's like, hey,
yeah.
you've been mistreating me all this time.
That's very true. That is very, and I like the way that you put it in that concept. So I have another one. I want to hear your opinion on this one then. Before there are words, there is the wordless communication of the body.
Totally. Totally.
Hmm. What does that make you think about, though?
Our, so like our subconscious, our body, it speaks to us in sensations. And then what happens is those sensations get sent up to our brain, and then our mind makes meaning of them.
Yes.
Yeah. And, but part of the reason why, we get so caught up in things like self-doubt, self-worth, all of that is because the mind can't actually project into the future. Even though we're like, oh, visualization, that it can't actually project into the future. It can only go off of your past experiences that are stored in your subconscious.
Mm.
And what the things that impact us the most is when there's an emotion connected with a story.
Hmm. An emotion connected to a story. That's true, because we're always going to relate it back, or we're going to reference that.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting. You did put a very interesting twist to it. And I love the fact that you keep reiterating the difference between how it's our subconscious and then our automatic system. Because let's be honest, subconsciously, we think about nothing to everything. You know what I mean? And consciously, we're doing way too much. You know what I mean? When we're consciously focused on something, sometimes it's not benefiting our body, because of how you said earlier about that self-talk. and what you tell yourself and what you choose to believe at that point. So it's like, do you come across clients, since you work with somatics, do you come across clients where you notice that certain techniques work better for them?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we all have different life experiences. We all have different stories that we've been telling ourselves. And that's the beauty of somatics, because there actually is no wrong way to do it, because it's you and the way that you are relating to you.
Hmm, that's nice. That's a mic drop right there. That's a pen drop. If I found my pen rolled off and I refuse to look for it. It's under my desk. But that is something truly interesting to think about because we have to reflect back that one, we're all hurting. One, we all have some form of trauma. And
Mhm.
when we are allow ourselves to heal and allow ourselves to open up to other people like yourselves who teach these skills, I mean, have you come across where you feel just good knowing that you could just help these people?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, there's philosophical debates about altruism, right? Like, are we ever actually doing an altruistic act? Is there ever actually something that we do that there's no benefit for us? And the answer, I believe, is no. There's always a benefit, there's always a payoff.
Yeah,
And being in service is one of the greatest payoffs that you can ever get. And it's not selfish to want to help people, it's the intent behind wanting to help people.
that's very true. That intention is the biggest thing that people forget because your intentions in life truly has a ripple effect in your life, and people wonder why things are going wrong and wrong and wrong. Well, what's your intentions? Is it out of
Mhm.
selfishness? Is it out of greed? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because people forget that when you have that self-centered mindset, it can only take you so far. You know what I mean? It only take you so far until you hit that brick wall and you realize like, oh my goodness, something needs to change. Something needs to like flip and reverse. That's very interesting. This has really got me thinking about, the way that I'm healing my trauma myself, because sometimes we can get so focused in one direction and we forget about all the other forms, and
Yeah.
we limit ourselves by not even trying to explore in that different avenue. I mean, I'm more so shocked at the fact that somatics is also breath work and tapping. And like I'm still stuck at that point. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I'm still stuck right there because it's baffling to me. Like I never thought about it in that form. So you really brought to me a different way to think about healing my myself differently because somebody is she the lady said like I wanted to change, I wanted to feel better, so that's the reason why she got into Naya technique. And I spoken to the other one who about tapping and how she just knew that the negative that was projecting out around her had to be changed by just a simple tap. And it never really stuck to me, you know what I mean? Like it never really gravitated to me in this aspect of the way that you're putting it. And it brings me back to another quote, the last one, I promise, that it basically says you feel it in your body and you get it out of your brain, out of your frontal lobe. And I feel like with the way that you described it is basically that quote right there. But how would you interpret that quote?
Yeah. So I love how you said that people don't like, they get stuck in one lane, because the thing is, yeah, we can do somatic work, we can clear the stuff out of our bodies, but if we don't do the daily mindset work to keep it up, the daily like pattern interruption of, oh, I'm not going to do that thing that I used to do all the time. Like, yeah, the energy might be cleared from your body, but that doesn't automatically mean your actions are going to follow. Like, you'll start to be inspired
Yeah,
to take different actions, but ultimately you need to do it differently. You need to change your mindset. And so it the pattern, or not the pattern, the order is repatterning, which that's done in the body, and then rewiring, reframing, and that's done with the mind.
Yeah, exactly. Huh. I really like that. And that's how you get it out and you
Yeah.
move on and you move forward because it's a different way of actually doing something. Because when you do something, it changes your trajectory of the direction of where you're going because you could be in the same rut because you're not changing the way that you're thinking and then you're not changing the way that you're acting towards it. So the fact that you brought that up, I mean, it makes it 100% real. That's the reason why diets don't work. That's the reason why New Year's resolutions don't work is because they'll have the idea, they feel all inspired and motivated, but then in actually nothing gets done because that action was never actually implemented. That action was never actually put into play, or it was one day, and then you were like, okay, it's too much work, or oh, I don't know if I could do it, and then nothing really changes.
Yeah.
Huh. That is truly interesting. Goodness. You really brought me a lot to think about. But that's the point of the show. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So you're doing a great job, Heather. Keep up the good work.
Thanks.
So I'm curious, what can be some lasting words of wisdom that you can leave my audience off with?
Mm,
Even though you
lasting.
already said a lot, you know what I mean? You already said so many great tapes and a great perspective, but what can be some lasting words?
I mean, one of the things I always say is the body is the guide and the mind provides.
Mm,
So, whatever you're feeling in your body, if there is chaos living in your body, your mind is going to continue to provide you with chaos. If there's peace in your body, your mind's going to provide you with peace.
that is truly interesting. That's a good one. And I'm just really curious. Are there any cons to somatics? Or is it just all positives?
Um, I would say the only con to somatics is some people they'll like look at, exercises on like TikTok or Instagram or something, and then they'll try to do it themselves. And like either it won't be really effective, or they'll kind of just get a little out of control. Or sometimes people have complex trauma or complex PTSD, and then they do somatic work and the facilitator isn't trained to handle that. So, yeah. So, that's why I always tell my clients, I'm like, if you have PTSD, you need to see a trauma trained, not trauma informed, trauma trained therapist, and then come back to me.
Yeah. At least you're honest. At least you're honest and say, hey, I could help you so far, but once you get to this crossroad, this is when you're gonna need professional help because I can't step in that direction. And if I do, I don't want to mess it up. You know what I mean? Because I feel
Mhm.
like with PTSD, it's very tricky. It's
Well,
very tricky.
the thing with complex trauma and PTSD, so one of the reasons why trauma it feels so jarring to us, it's not just because something happens to us, it's because our support system is gone. Our agency is gone. And so when we have like those deep rooted traumas, complex trauma, I had complex trauma and like PTSD, you actually need to physically feel somebody in your space, not just over Zoom. They need to lay hands on you to get you back in the moment so you don't re experience what it was that happened to you, because that just re traumatizes you.
I was gonna say, wouldn't that just re-traumatize you? But you already
Yeah.
said it. I mean, because
Yeah.
that's the first thing I would think about if I'm doing a therapy session over Zoom, and it's like, okay, we're gonna do some hypnosis, or we're just gonna like get you in that place so that you can explore what you probably don't perceive from that moment. I'd be like, I don't know if I'm fully ready for this. You know what I mean? That would have been like gut wrenching because yeah, I would want to have that person physically there to remind me of my reality, to remind me of I'm not in that space or I'm not experiencing that at whatever time frame or age or whatever that case may be. Because Man, so, to be honest, I hate when I have to deal and focus with my trauma, or my trauma comes to me in my dreams and is like, "Come on, Mitzi, we're gonna work on this." And I'm just like, do we have to?
No, yeah, totally, totally. Sometimes there's a little bit more resistance than others for sure.
Yeah, I think I'm part of that group. But no, I think that's the reason why I love talking to individuals like yourself, because it reminds me that, you know, we're never fully going to get where we want to be until we get to this healing portion in our lives. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Because it affects our relationships. It affects our work environment. It affects our outlook on life. It affects our relationship with our children and our spouses and our bosses and just our friendships, every relationship that you have, even with money, you know what I mean? And even with your animals and just objects, the way that you treat your laptop or your phone, I mean, it starts to seep in every area of your life that you don't even realize it. You
Oh
don't.
yeah. Oh yeah. I like when people talk about lifestyle, I'm always like healing is part of lifestyle. It's not separate.
Yeah, absolutely. That's, to be honest, that's have been my goal this whole entire year, and my reminder. I have like sticky notes everywhere, and I have like reminders on my phone that pops up to remind me to just center myself and remind me to like not lose control, and to just give me this, constant affirmation and constant like, oh, that it's going to be okay. But I'm that type of person that works on repetitiveness. You know what I mean? So as long as I'm being repetitive,
Everybody does.
yeah, everybody. So join the bagwagon. You're with me. We need to be repetitive too. So
Oh yeah. I am like like people ask me sometimes they're like, "Oh, how are you so calm, cool and collected?" And I'm like, because I do this work every single day, like thousands of times a day. I'm redirecting myself thousands of times a day. And
yeah,
they're always so surprised. And I'm like, look, we have around, here's the thing, we have around 40,000 thoughts each day. It takes about 10,000 reps to achieve mastery.
yeah.
So it's like, oh man, like that's so much repetitiveness.
It sounds a lot. You mean now I'm really thinking about, I'm like, you know what? That does sound right. 1,000 sounds about a pretty good amount of time of how many times I have to tell myself to get right.
Yeah, it's yeah, thousands of times a day. And I mean, for people, they would think, oh, that's so overwhelming, but it's just tiny little moments, right? Like if I'm like, I'm always like, hey, have the ice cream, have a cookie every now and then. But sometimes I'll go on like binges where I'll be like, oh, I really want sugar this day, this day, this day. And then I'm like, no, Heather, don't eat the cookie because it doesn't feel like I have to parent myself and say, no, what you need instead, you think you want the sugar, but really you need a different mineral or nutrient instead. So let's eat that because that'll make you feel better.
Exactly. I know. I tell myself that all the time too. Like I have to remind myself, like, no, I can't eat this, but I'm choosing not to. Or I have to play with the words, because if I literally restrict myself when it comes to like food specifically, it's it's a whole binge sessions, just like you said. And sometimes when I see myself like getting frustrated or overwhelmed or overstimulated with my kids because they're at this toddler stage, and it's like, oh, and I have to constantly remind myself and breathe, even if it's like the simplest things, that it's okay. Just saying the word, it's okay, just calms my soul sometimes, because if not, it's not okay. You know what I mean? So I think
Yeah.
playing with the words and just playing with your mind and just understanding how you receive things is important, because everybody receives things and retains it differently, but it's as long as you're retaining it and you're practicing it and you're implementing it. I think those are the most important aspects in this. I mean, is it wrong to say that?
No, yeah, I totally agree with that. And, doing it from a place of love and support for yourself,
Yeah.
because, so much of the time we try to like outsource support from other things, other people,
Yeah.
and then we
Hmm.
don't feel fulfilled. And that affects our relationships, right? Like if you're in a romantic relationship with somebody and you're being, a damsel in distress and you're trying to get them to be your savior, the only one that can actually save you, besides Jesus, obviously, is is yourself.
I love that response. I'm gonna use that response from going forward. I write that down real quick. Goodness gracious. I think that's beautiful, but time is running out and I wish we don't have to let go, but I have to. So I just want to say thank you, Heather, for giving me this time with you and just really sharing and really opening up a new avenue of our friendship and relationship because I feel like I have to have another reason to bring you back on my show because I have such a great time with you and speaking with you about life because goodness, you truly made me think about this really differently this time. I haven't thought about a lot in a while because I've been sick. So you really like turned my reels today. So thank you so much. And as always, if you guys want to know more about this lovely woman that I have here, please go check her out. I have her lovely photo and access to her website so that you can find all the greatness that Heather has to offer to the world because she does too. Everybody has something great to offer. So it's truly time for y'all to think about it. So always keep thinking, y'all. Bye.